All right, everyone, and now for part two, we've got to talk about Trump's achievements as well, taking off from the last video. 2020 election, I expect there is a high degree of chance that Trump gets reelected. First, I talked about optics, believability. He simply, if you were casting for the role of the presidency, there aren't a lot of Democrats you would cast in a role unless it was a dark comedy or an apocalyptic movie, or maybe something solemn about an evil president, like a Kamala Harris presidency, and she starts suppressing people and trying to sell the republic. Now, though, we have to talk about Trump's accomplishments and match them up against what others have accomplished, their platforms in a more strictly political sense. Beyond incumbent advantage and believability, platform does matter. Arguably less. At this point, there aren't a whole lot of platforms. It's a little bit sparse on the Democratic side. People are still malleable and maneuvering. Sometimes you get a fumble like Warren on healthcare. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to name some of the things Trump has done, what he can run on, some things maybe he shouldn't run on that I've disagreed with him on, although, in some cases people disagree with me. For instance, I realize I'm technically in the minority on abortion. I realize that. I have no problem with it, by the way. First and foremost would be his signature legislation, which is the wall. This got off to a very, very rocky start. It should have been tackled first. Instead, he tackled Obamacare first. I disagreed with that basic strategy, although in the end, he did succeed at least eliminating the mandate, which has also called into question the constitutionality of the ACA. That may be a fight that gets waged before the election. That could become messy for the Dems or for Trump. That is a wild card, technically speaking, healthcare. There's a reason why Warren has fixated on making this signature. Bernie Sanders, that, and education. He's got basically two main platforms. Biden has largely fled the battlefield on the issue and said, well, we'd add a public option to Obamacare. That's all I would do. Leave it alone. Obama's a great guy. Did I mention I was his vice president? That's what he's running on. So first would be the wall. The wall is mostly a win for Trump. Despite the rocky start, you've seen a change in news reporting, by the way. At first it was, well, no new wall has actually been built, which was misleading. He began by retrofitting existing wall structures that were from yesteryear. Chain link fences, concrete embankments, things that are less sophisticated than the double level system he's got now. By the way, cutting through a wall doesn't matter if you then have to cut through a second wall, triggering detection systems in the meantime. It will never be perfect, but it's considerably better than what's there now. Trump began by retrofitting hundreds of miles of existing border barrier with this new upgrade. That includes both monitoring systems and the physical barrier, additional enforcement. Apparently, it's a 30-foot wall, a road, a 20-foot wall. There's surveillance systems involved with both walls there as well, monitoring. The idea is that you're slowing down human movement in hopes that you can get agents into the area to detain people. By the way, Bernie Sanders saying he won't detain people at all. He's now taking up the Warren open borders line, the Beto O'Rourke strategy. We now have two Dem frontrunners that do not fundamentally want the United States to operate as a nation state at all. That's pretty worrying, but, the Democrats have gone off the lemming-like far-left cliff. With Donald Trump, he got that. He then secured funding for the rest of his wall, but he was prevented from actually building it until recently. Now he's roaring ahead with construction. I don't know what the tally is, but he's expecting some odd 500 miles of new barrier to be up by the time of the election. That's a win. Because now the legacy media can't say there's no new wall or it's just replacing old barrier. Now they have to fixate on, well, the wall's not perfect. Well, it's there. Trump built the wall. It's being built as we speak. He's got the money. He's secured the land. He won. Which is why the legacy media largely doesn't report on it anymore, and the alt media, people like myself, are the only ones talking about it. I would think that the headline should have been President Secures Signature Legislation. Major promise to core fan base fulfilled. Barrier will be done in time for election. 500 new miles of barrier plus replacing some of the old barrier. That should have been the headlines that we saw. Instead it was, put a power saw and cut through it. Yes, if you sit there long enough, you can saw through the border wall. Wow. It's almost like you have to have something other than just a wall there, like people there that can respond when somebody's sawing through your wall. Of course. By the way, this is why you don't build a rock or a cement embankment. You get a hole blown out of that, and it takes a lot longer and more materials and time and manpower to replace it. Whereas with this, you just weld on a new piece of wall. It's modular in form. It's really easily replaced, fairly cheap, concrete filled. It works. So he's got that. He's got the wall. That's to his core fans. That doesn't expand his coalition at all. That just helps with turnout among his core fans. He's also going after sanctuary cities and states. It takes a lot longer. That's being battled in court, which is deliberately trying to hamstring him to prevent him from being reelected. And you know that it's activism. It's all coming from the Ninth Circuit for a reason. So he's got that. Deportations have taken place, significant deportations. It's funny because supposedly Trump's not fulfilling that promise to his core fans, and yet Bernie Sanders is making it a signature piece of promise to his fans. Well, I will stop these raids from happening. If they're ineffective, then why the hell would you care whether they got stopped or not? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to make that a main part of your platform. Whoops! You just actually exonerated what Trump's been saying for the last year, which is that yes, the deportations are effective. The numbers on those vary so wildly that it's not even worth bothering to pay attention. By and large, that's a win. He got taxes down. That's a big thing. People think with their wallets, people vote with their wallets. At the end of the day, the reason why all of these different analytics services that discounted the possibility of Trump in 2016 are now openly anticipating a high chance of re-election. Some of them punt it. They say, well, he's got a better than 50-50 chance. Give him the real number. It's like 70-80% chance that these people are working with. The odds makers predict a Trump re-election. They're looking at the Dem field and they're seeing weakness and fear. Meanwhile, Trump's got all these things thrown on. Taxes, the wall, the VA overhaul, big thing for the military. Supposedly the military is fleeing in droves from Trump's platform. I don't know, I think that that's just a couple of generals that are coming out to criticize him because he doesn't want to bomb people. That's another main promise kept. No world policing. Trump has, by and large, been the most peace-mongering president that we've had since before the Reagan era began. And people still pretend that he's a dictator light, that he's a bloodthirsty, tyrannical, fascist authoritarian. It's the funniest thing ever. I can't wait till he lays bare those claims in the debates for the presidential re-election bid that he's waging. He's got diplomacy. There is still some hope with North Korea. The overhaul, the USMCA, the trade deal, that's a major win that simply hasn't been ratified by Congress. The Democrats are for it, and yet they still won't ratify it. Why? Because they don't want him to be able to run on re-election bid in part on trade deals. Chinese trade deal, that one's looming. Tariffs have been scaled back already. That's a major win for him. The non-signing of the, what was it called? Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP, I believe. The one that Hillary Clinton was for before she was against it. You know, sort of a John Kerry deal. The one she glowingly praised in her book before editing the new edition of it once she started running. Whoops, you probably should have done that beforehand. The one that a lot of the Democrats pushed for before realizing that the majority of the population fucking hated. Yeah, that TPP. That was shelved by Trump. He stopped it. It's dead. Thank goodness. There were people at the time claiming that it was the U.S. ceding power to China. Trump is a real friend to China. That's why he's pounding them in trade right now. So there's a brief list of some of his selling points. Now, of course, you can say that there are plenty of detriments too. The black sites for the CIA thing, which was like literally right as he took the presidency. Not a fan of that. Bombing Syria. We are still involved there, although he kept us out of open war with Turkey, which I think is a good thing. Apparently, it's no longer popular among the left to suggest that the United States shouldn't police the world. Now we have to be world peacekeeper again, because there's a Republican in office. And you know that if he did send troops in, if he did do anything militarily, they'd call him a warmonger, say he was the next George W. By the way, I'd agree with him if he did. Now we look at some of the things from the Democrats. What do they have as selling points? With Biden, it's basically nostalgia. Biden's main selling point and the reason he's front runner is the rest of the Democrats have gone nuts. I want to return to Obama's policies and just sit there and be the same as we were for Obama's 2 terms. I want to return to that. No more Trump chaos tweeting and no far leftism. That's what Biden's selling point is. By the way, he has the additional, and this is a positive, he's been VP. He knows sort of how this system works. He's already worked with the president for 8 years of his life. He basically knows what to do, at least from the establishment viewpoint. For some people, that's a sign of stability. That's a sign of nostalgia, and they like it. He makes them feel safe for whatever reason. I can't say that with a straight face, but there are a lot of people that believe that. About a third of Democrats seem to agree with that basic gist. If you look at Warren, she's got a long, distinguished career of repeatedly switching party and priority in order to sell herself to voters. She's like a chameleon. I can't really think of a good selling point for Warren other than she happens to be technically viable but not geriatric. Technically. I say technically viable. When people wise up to the fact that she's actually flush with corporate cash and isn't a progressive grassroots candidate, in the general, that would be a problem. Because you know that Trump would focus on that. He'd say, well, I don't take corporate cash. I self-fund still. Everything, small donors, haha, people love me. You've got less donations. You're poor. He'll browbeat her, and she'll do her deer in the headlights thing, and she'll try to deflect, guaranteed, if she's the nominee. She will try to deflect by tut-tutting and claiming sexism, and it will backfire. She'll do just what Hillary Clinton did, because she's just like Hillary Clinton. And she'll lose based on that. And based on the fact that she's constantly lying to her own constituents about her marriage, her ethnicity, everything else, and her love for beer, for firewater. Bernie Sanders' selling points. He's a little bit better than them. He's even older than Biden, but he's still coherent. That helps, of course. He's been in politics for a long time, so he's got technically the legislative believability. And also, he seems to be more independent than the rest of the Democrats. He was reluctant to even join the party, which, by the way, is not a good selling point for a lot of the Democrats. In a general, probably would be a good thing. Bernie Sanders is offering leftism, far leftism, and he's unabashed about it. His main selling point is it's honesty. Honesty and the fact that he's been working towards the same socialistic goals for the last half century. Not sure how well the average American will actually think about that. I don't think that it'll work. I think he would lose in a landslide because I think that his open, avowed socialism, regardless of what self-proclaimed purity-spiraled true trademark 2016 election socialists think about his idea of socialism. Well, he's not. He's just a social democrat. He's just a welfare liberal. He uses the term. The term is thought to be negative by the overwhelming majority of Americans, including at least a sizable minority of the center left. You are not going to be able to elect him. When you match him against Trump, Trump will pull the ultimate ace out of his sleeve and say, look, unhinged Bernie. And all of that, Trump is chaos, Trump is evil, Trump is nightmarish and is dangerous, goes out the window because people will wake up to the realization Trump's been the president, things are going all right. But here's this other dude, he's kind of sounds like a lunatic, and he's claiming that Trump is the unhinged one. Also, he might have a health scare because he's literally had a heart attack a month ago. I would think that, again, does matter. Correct prediction, it stalled out his growth in the polls. He was on the upswing. He lost several points after that. He's only technically, at this point, even viable. Buttigieg. He offers a leftist platform divorced of some of the wedge issues. Again, the problem for him, in a general, he would do so much better than these other people in the Democratic Party. But he can't, I don't think he'll get through the primaries, and here's why. He's a Christian, open and avowed, and he keeps talking about it. It's great for Iowa. It's not really great if you're trying to pander to the leftist voters you need in the primaries. It's so much better for a general. I think he expects everyone else to implode, leaving the way clear for him as a moderate candidate to get through. But he's not really moderate either. He's taken up a far left line on guns. He's taken up a far left line on immigration. He's increasingly far left on health care. He's a far left. He's like a Tulsi Gabbard. He's pretending to be more moderate based on the fact that he'll wear a cross. But he's also gay. Being gay while being a fundamentalist Christian, that's a little bit weird to certain voting blocks. I can understand how it can happen. A lot of them can't. Again, his main selling point, arguably, is youth and charisma, which goes out the window if your charisma is used to say things that you're not willing to pander. You're not willing to say what those voters want to hear. You can't get through the primaries to get to the general where you'd be viable. I think that's a wall against him. I don't think that he'll make it. I don't think he'll be the nominee. I think the Democrats are insane not for taking him more seriously. And then rounding out those viable candidates, technically, he's not really viable now, Kamala Harris. I can't think of a selling point for Kamala Harris other than her age is right. She's got the age range. She's 56 or 57. She's at the proper age to be a presidential nominee. That's really it. I can't think of anything else. I can't honestly believe that anyone takes her seriously. She has no selling point. She's not offering anything that some other candidate didn't think of first, with a first debate performance that buoyed her up into the double digits very briefly. She's not electable. She can't run against Trump. She literally lied straight up to her own fans about smoking weed listening to Tupac albums 2 years before Tupac released an album, while jailing black people for smoking weed. That's not a great look. You put her up against Trump, You might have a Nixon re-election landslide sort of thing where he sweeps the Electoral College almost completely, losing only the most bitterly far-left parts of the country, like a California or Washington, D.C. What happens if you put her, if a paradigm shift happens, an electoral paradigm shift, and the left loses control of California based on backlash from the suburbs or something? You could actually have that happen if you run Kamala Harris. That's not off the table. It's not going to happen with a Biden. Biden will mumble and incoherently whine his way through it, and he'll lose in a landslide, but he's not going to lose like California or Illinois or something. Kamala Harris, I don't know. I think she's arguably the weakest of the five. And again, keep in mind, one of those people is a near 80-year-old socialist. One of them is demented. One of them habitually lies about every aspect of her past and has only been consistent in inconsistency throughout her entire career. The other one is a gay Christian. That's really great for the Democratic primaries. Like, it's almost painful thinking about it at times. Really, really warped. So yeah, this is part two of why I expect Trump to be reelected. When you look at what he's accomplished, the optics of Trump, the fact that most people at this point are comfortable with the fact that the president makes mean tweets to world leaders, there's not a whole lot of meat and bones for the Democrats left. They can't run on the economy. They can't run on diplomatic failures. They can't really run on him being chaotic and evil and scary, because at this point he doesn't scare people. You know, anyone who's scared by him already didn't support him to begin with. His coalition has been slowly growing over time. I don't think that he has to be at 46 to win re-election like the conventional Obama at 46 knowledge. I don't think so. I think he can win with 44, 45% approval very easily because he's likely to have an extremely weak opponent. It's probably going to be Biden. You could literally see the Democratic nominee stroke out live on a debate stage. If that happens, it's all over same day. What the hell are the Dems going to do? Oh yeah, by the way, yeah, sorry that the candidate that we all agreed upon running, that we probably jerry-rigged in there anyway with superdelegates in a contested convention, sorry they died, sorry they're incapacitated, sorry that they had to drop out because their family said enough is enough. Yeah, and here's this other person that you didn't vote for. That'll go over really, really well. That's about all. Peace out.